Powell Street Festival Society is celebrating its 39th year. It is a festival of Japanese Canadian culture. It's the largest of its kind in Canada, and it's also the longest running community festival in Vancouver. And it was started by members of Tonari Gumi, the Vancouver Association of Volunteers. And it began in 1977, and this is going to be our 39th year. And it takes place, historically it's taken place here in Oppenheimer Park. And we've got a whole bunch of things. We've got a lot of traditional and contemporary arts and culture. Some highlights, I'd say, we have David Suzuki coming. He's going to be giving a talk about his new book at the Fire Hall Arts Center. That's just down the street here on Cordova. In the park, we're going to be having a huge taiko event called Against the Current. And that's a combination of 4 different taiko groups. They're going to be working with First Nations music group called SOCAM, and that's going to be taking place on Sunday night. So other than that, we have Niho Takase. She's a Cuban jazz pianist. She'll be performing on the main stage here. And over on Jackson Street, just over here, we're going to be turning that into, we'll have a stage there as well. There's going to be a marketplace, and it's going to have more of an urban feel. We'll have DJs and dancers. At the Japanese Language School, there's going to be, the Consul General is going to give a talk. Also, we're going to have a Japanese archery, Kyodo, that's going to be taking place on both Saturday and Sunday. At the language school, we're also going to have Nikkei Stories, which actually looks at the history of the Japanese Canadian community in and around the Powell Street area. And it's going to start off with a talk and then a little tour around the area where there's going to be plaques that talk more about the history of Japanese Canadian history and culture. Food's a staple of our festival. We're going to have 17 food trucks here. Everything from takoyaki to spam nigiri, all sorts of, it's going to be the largest concentration and the most diverse concentration of Japanese food here in Vancouver. Powell Street Festival Society acts as an umbrella for a lot of different Japanese Canadian communities, and they're all represented here during the August weekend. We have Tonari Gumi is going to be here. The Nikkei Center from Burnaby is also represented here. The JCC. One of the really great things about the festival is that everything is free. All the performances here are free. The food vendor trucks, it's extremely cheap. It's one of those things that hasn't really changed since the festival started in the 70s. It's got this really wonderful grassroots feel to it. I think a lot of things, you can see a lot of performers here. They've been doing their traditional dances, their traditional music here. They've been doing it for 39 years. And so we have a wonderful sense of tradition, but we're also looking ahead into the future. We're looking at a lot of experimental jazz, we're looking at experimental music. So it's a really great balance of both the historic and the new. We have a lot of the traditional stuff combined with a lot of new ideas. For example, on Saturday we're going to have a group called Soul Daiko, and that's a Tetsu Taiko group working with hip-hop dancers. So it's a wonderful fusion. And also we're going to have Bernie Arai on Sunday. He's a jazz drummer based here in Vancouver, and he's going to do a set that's inspired by Wabi Sabi. So ways of sort of bridging the divide between the traditional and the contemporary. A lot of Japanese Canadians come from across the country to see the festival because it's a great way of reconnecting with the Japanese Canadian community. This is the heart. This park, it represents the heart of the Japanese Canadian community before the internment in World War II. So a lot of people see this as our symbolic home. Even though the Japanese Canadian community isn't really here anymore, we come here once a year to celebrate our history here. So yeah, you do get a lot of people from right across the country. And for a lot of them, it's really emotional too. We get a lot of artists coming here to perform, and they realize that many of their parents or grandparents used to live just down the street here. It ends up being a very emotional experience for them. The festival takes place August 1st and 2nd in and around Oppenheimer Park. Starts at 11:30 in the morning and goes right till 7 o'clock at night. So on both days. We have performances on the main stage here in the park. We also have performances in Marketplace and food on Jackson Street. We have children's tent. We have lots of children's activities. There's going to be a book reading of Rei Nakamura's Peach Girl. There's going to be Sukawari, and and also a series of performances at the Fire Hall Arts Theatre. We have Rachel Iwasa, we have Ume Silk Kimono, David Suzuki, Bernie Arai, Hyperdroids, and yeah, it's going to be packed full of activities in 4 or 5 different locations. Last year we brought in just over 12,000 people. We're going to be expanding the festival next year. I can't talk too much about it because it's still in the planning stages, but we learned a lot last year when we moved to Alexander Street. Last year we had the tent city in the park, and so we had to relocate the festival just down to Alexander. And we're going to be exploring that as an additional venue for the festival. We're also going to be looking to increase our profile throughout the year. So we want to have, well, the festival is always our focal point, but we're going to start looking at having other events throughout the year that create a build-up towards that. So there'll be a lot of different things that celebrate the history and explore contemporary Japanese-Canadian arts and culture.